Plebes unum presentas elecciones presidenciales en la historia mexicana. The 17th official presidential election in Mexican history took place on July 2nd, 2000. Fun fact, this was one day before I was born. Anyways, Cedillo was not doing so hot when he first got elected. A few days after entering office, Mexico suffered a huge economic crisis brought on by the peso being devalued with the US dollar. And while this was the fault of the previous administration, Cedillo was the one who ended up getting the blame. He was also able to get a $20 billion loan from the US to fix the issue. He also faced an issue with the fact that he was still seen as a weak puppet president being controlled by Gortari, so Cedillo started distancing himself from Gortari, culminating with the arrest of Gortari's brother for murdering PRI Secretary General Jose Francisco Ruiz Massieu. Also, the Zapatistas were not fully satiated from their last conflict, and there was another uprising in 1995. Cedillo was also starting a conflict with the Catholic Church. As it turns out, bishops were getting involved with and covering for the Zapatistas in an effort to be a middleman during the conflict. The PRD's leadership was also helpful in the negotiations. He also made a new poverty alleviation program to help the poorest families as long as their kids went to school, and led on some electoral reform by creating an autonomous organization to oversee the elections, and made the head of Mexico City an elected position, which was won by Cardenas easily, and created a group that would oversee campaign spending. Speaking of electoral politics, the midterms had an interesting development, as this was the first election that the PRI did not win a majority of seats in the Chamber of Duties, just a plurality. Some new parties were formed in the meantime, but we'll get to them soon enough. With all that out of the way, let's move on to the election itself. First, there was a familiar face, former cabinet member to Portillo and Echeverria and PRD founder, Porfirio Muñoz Ledo. He originally wanted to run as the candidate of the Party of the Democratic Revolution, as he was the party co-founder, but the PRD leadership was like, nah, you know you're not going to be the candidate, so why even bother? So, he claimed that the PRD leadership was corrupt and left the party to become the candidate of the PARM. He ran under the motto, Porfirio yes complies. Second was another familiar face, Manuel Camacho Solis, running under a new party he created called the Party of the Democratic Center, a new centrist political party. You know, think of it as the Mexican Reform Party. Solis ran under the motto, only one Mexico, let's defend it. Third was political activist Gilberto Rinchon Gallard, running under a new party called Social Democracy, a social democratic party founded by members of the PRD who left due to internal party struggles. Though he did face a challenge by activist and former Chamber of Duties candidate Patricia Mercado. He ran under the slogan, let's give a rose to Mexico. But much like last time, this was mostly a three-person race. First was Cardenas, running for the presidency a third time, bringing back something from his first run, an electoral alliance, forming the Alliance for Mexico with the Party of the Democratic Revolution, the Labor Party, a small left-wing nationalist party called the Party of the Nationalist Society, and a new party founded by the left-wing PRI dissidents called Convergence for Democracy. He ran under the slogan, For Mexico to Victory. The second alliance to form was the Alliance for Change, which was formed by the PAN and the Mexican Green Party. Despite some opposition by the PAN, they nominated former Chamber of Duties member and governor of Guanajuato, Vicente Fox. He ran under the slogan, The Change That Suits You. And lastly came the coalition of the PRI and the PRI. Yeah, surprisingly, being in power for 70 years means you don't really need to form a new coalition. But you see, one thing was notably different from the last election. You see, due to the reforms that Cedillo made, they couldn't just pick their successor by the old Dedazo method. So now, they had to hold a presidential primary to nominate their candidates. 4 candidates ended up seeking the PRI's nomination. First was former president of the Chamber of Duties, Humberto Roque Villanueva. Second was the controversial governor of Puebla, Manuel Barlet Diaz, Controversial because in 1985, he was involved with the decision to order the kidnap, torture, and murder of American DEA officer Enrique Camarena to protect the Guadalajara cartel. Third was Governor of Tabasco, Roberto Madrazo Pintado. And fourth was cabinet member for Madrid and Cedillo, Francisco Labastida, who was seen as the unofficial Dedazo candidate. The primary was heavily contested between Madrazo and Labastida. Madrazo aggressively campaigned against the heads of the party, using his name as a pun, saying that he'd deal a Madrazo against the Dedazo. He got a hefty amount of support from the average PRI members, but the primary favored the preferred candidate of Labastida, and as such he won the nomination, running under the slogan, "May power serve the people." If the PRI primary was any indication, this election was going to get nasty. The PRI was the weakest it has been in its 71 years of power. The opposition is not going to let this opportunity pass by. Cardenas and Fox campaigned aggressively against Labastida. Cardenas focusing on his policy planks because he was still considered the third wheel in this hypothetical tricycle. Fox, being seen as the leading opposition candidate with more to lose, had to campaign more aggressively, calling Labastida La Vestida, which implied that he was a cross-dresser, and despite the fact that he was a well-off governor from a decently well-off state, he traded his business suit for a cowboy hat and boots to come off more populist. This came to a head in the first presidential debate of the cycle, having all 6 candidates in attendance to debate. The major takeaways from this debate were that Labastida was the biggest loser of the night, and Fox was the biggest winner of the night. However, his win was handicapped slightly as the debate aired on a PRI-controlled channel. The next debate was planned to be a bit different. Fox wanted a more open program on all channels with a more flexible format featuring 3 interviewers, whereas the other 2 candidates invited to the debate, Labastida and Cardenas, insisted on a more traditional format with a single moderator and live coverage only on 2 small stations. This led to the debate inevitably being delayed from Tuesday to Friday because they couldn't end up agreeing on what to do, each candidate blaming each other for the debate falling through. However, during all this controversy, Fox was seen as the most reasonable when he made an address stating, "We don't care about the height of the podiums or what snacks they serve in the VIP suites. We just want an open debate." Labastida and Cardenas invited Fox to a meeting the day of the debate was scheduled to iron out the details, but it was inevitably just a shouting match between the candidates, culminating with Fox just slamming his hand on the desk and saying, "Oi, oi, oi." The PRI media spun this as Fox being childish and astringent, so Fox inevitably agreed to the debate on their terms. A debate that he was again seen as the winner of. When he first came to the debate, people were chanting "Death to Fox," but when he left, they were chanting "Oi, oi, oi." Fox was so confident in the people liking him that he stated that it wasn't even a matter of if the people voted for him, but if the PRI would just flat out steal this election. The polls for this election had originally shown mostly Labastida victories, but now showed him and Fox consistently swapping for first and second place. Fox's jump in the polls even compelled Munoz Ledo to drop out and endorse him to help the PRI's opposition, though he'd remain on the ballot due to his late exit and the PRM wanting to not lose their ballot line. The PRI was so worried that they would have a blowout, they even gave people who pledged to vote for the PRI care packages that would contain rice, beans, chocolate, among other things. In fact, former President Jose Portillo decided he would come out of retirement and make an official endorsement for the 2000 presidential election. Oh wait, no. You see, I was actually mistaken. You see, he didn't endorse anybody in the 2000 Mexican presidential election. He endorsed someone in the 2000 US presidential election, Lyndon LaRouche. Okay then. And here are the results. In an actual surprise, Vicente Fox won with 42.52% of the popular vote. Labastida got 36.11% of the vote. Cardenas got 16.64% of the vote. Gallardo got 1.58% of the vote. Camacho got 0.55% of the vote. and Munoz got 0.42% of the vote. Into the Chamber of Duties, the Alliance for Change got 224 seats, the PRI got 208 seats, and the Alliance for Mexico got 65 seats. Zedillo was on TV that night, congratulating Fox on his win, which angered many prominent old guard PRIistas who saw Zedillo as a traitor, and there were even concerns that they may lead a violent uprising against the Fox government. But thankfully that didn't end up happening. This election was notable for obviously being the first where an opposition candidate won and ended the PRI's 70-year-long reign. Will Fox bring new, fantastic changes to Mexico's political scene? Well, te veré para las próximas elecciones, amigo. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified when a future video of mine comes out. And if you're interested in more content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or join my Discord, or check out my articles on the Independent Political Report.